I don't remember when the orchard first began calling to me. Some nights it felt like a voice threading through the air, thin, silver, and cold, slipping past the curtains of my bedroom window and settling against my skull like a whispered command. Other nights, it was more subtle, a tug beneath the ribs, an ache in the bones, the sensation of being watched by something that had no eyes. But regardless of how it came, the pull was always strongest when the moon swelled full and heavy over the hills, hanging low enough to touch. And on those nights, no matter how tightly I tried to cling to sleep, I always woke standing at the edge of the orchard. Moonfall Orchard. The name belonged to the land long before it belonged to the trees. Even before the first seed was ever planted there, the soil had been avoided. Too pale, too soft, too prone to strange blooms that sprouted overnight and shriveled by morning. My grandfather used to warn me never to cross the stone boundary wall after sundown, but he never said why. Just, the orchard isn't ours at night. It isn't anyone's. I should have listened. It was the last advice he ever gave me before he forgot who I was. But that came later. The first time I tasted the fruit was almost an accident. I had come home from a long day working down at the docks. My hands numb with salt water, my spine aching, and my thoughts drifting like wreckage. My mother had died only a month before, leaving me hollow in ways I still haven't found the words for. The house felt wrong without her. Too empty, too quiet, too clean. Sometimes I wandered just to avoid the silence. That night the moon was monstrous, white, swollen, wet-looking, like a single enormous eye staring down at the world. I could feel its weight pressing onto the land. The orchard glowed with it. The trees, tall, unnaturally slender things with bark as smooth as bone, seemed to pulse faintly as if breathing. I don't know what drew me deeper: curiosity, loneliness, or some buried piece of me that already suspected what the orchard truly was. The fruit grew like lanterns, pale orbs swaying gently from branches, each one lit from within by some ghostly radiance. When I lifted one, its warmth shocked me. It throbbed faintly, like something alive, like something with a heartbeat. And then, because grief blurs the boundary between sense and impulse, I bit into it. The taste was cold. Not like ice, but like forgetting. The moment the juice touched my tongue, something opened in me. Some chamber of the mind I never knew existed. And pouring into it was a memory. Not mine. I was standing in a field at dusk, the sky burning a violent red. My hands were calloused, much larger than the ones I truly owned. Someone was running toward me, laughing, breathless, illuminated by the dying light. I felt a weight in my pocket, a ring. I knew, with the certainty of lived experience, that I was about to propose. Then the memory snapped shut like a trap. My knees buckled. The fruit fell from my shaking hand, rolling across the silver grass. I staggered back until I hit a tree trunk, my breath stuttering. When I recovered, I walked home in a daze, gripping the edges of myself as though terrified something inside me might spill out. For days afterward, I told no one. Who would believe me? I barely believed myself. But that memory, his memory, wasn't fading. It lingered behind my eyes like a bruise. I could recall every detail with painful clarity. The warmth of the ring in my pocket, the distant beat of cicadas, the feeling of hope, so bright it felt like staring directly into the sun. Hope like that had never belonged to me, but it lived in my chest as if it always had. When the next full moon came, I swore I wouldn't return. I barricaded the door. I buried myself under blankets. I told myself that grief was making me imagine things. But I woke at the orchard edge again. And again after that. In the following weeks, I tasted more fruit. Not every night. I tried to resist, but enough that my mind became a mosaic of lives I had never lived. A girl swimming in moonlit water, her hair fanning around her like ink. A soldier clutching a blood-soaked letter. A child hiding beneath floorboards as footsteps passed overhead. Memories layered over my own until I couldn't tell which pieces of me were real and which were borrowed. With every bite, the orchard asked for something in return. A trade. Something subtle at first. A forgotten street name, a misplaced childhood smell, a blurred face in an old photograph. I didn't notice the losses immediately. Who does, when pieces of the self crumble quietly? But soon the gaps grew sharper. I forgot the sound of my mother's laughter. I couldn't recall the warmth of her hands. And once I realized what the orchard was taking, it was too late. I should have stopped. I should have run. Instead, I kept returning. Because the memories, those stolen, impossible memories, were beautiful in a way my own life had never been. Then something changed. On the 9th visit, as I reached for a fruit hanging low to the ground, one of the trees moved. Not from the wind, there was none. The entire orchard was still as carved stone. But the tree leaned, subtly, deliberately, as if offering the fruit to me. I froze. The branches around me creaked softly, like old bones shifting. Then came the whisper. Not a voice in the air, a voice inside my skull. Eat. The sound wasn't quite human. It wasn't quite anything. It was layered. Many voices speaking as one, echoing through me like something trapped in a cavern. I stepped back, but my heel caught on a root. I fell hard. The fruit dangled just inches from my face. Eat, the orchard urged. We remember for you. You remember for us. Take what is offered. Become what is needed. I scrambled to my feet, my heart slamming in my chest, and fled. I didn't stop running until my lungs were on fire and the trees were far behind. But that night, sleep abandoned me. My skull buzzed with phantom whispers. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the orchard breathing under the moon. And somewhere, nestled deep inside me, a new fear took root. Because the orchard had spoken to me. And because part of me, some awful, hungry part, wanted to go back and listen. I didn't go back for 2 full moons. That was the longest I had ever resisted the orchard's pull. The longest I had allowed my mind to settle into its natural shape without foreign memories sliding against my own. And for a while, just long enough to deceive myself, I believed I was free of it. But memory has its own gravity. Sometimes, when I was walking along the pier, I would suddenly feel the sensation of sand beneath my feet instead of wood, as if I were someone else entirely. Other times, I would be washing dishes and catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window and flinch. Not because anything was wrong with it, but because I expected a different face to be staring back. A man's face, a soldier's face, a child's face. It depended on the day. The worst moment came one morning when I woke in my bed, sunlight warming my blankets, and for a breathless instant I didn't know where I was. I didn't know who I was. I lay there, trembling, as the memories I had eaten warred with the ones I was born with, trying to decide which version of me should open its eyes. I knew then that something had to be done, so I went to see my grandfather. He lived on the outskirts of town, in a small house sagging beneath the weight of age and ivy. When I arrived, he was sitting in his old rocking chair by the window, staring blankly at the horizon. His fingers twitched from time to time, twitches that used to mean he was thinking deeply or remembering something. But now they were empty motions, no thoughts behind them. "Granddad," I said softly, lowering myself into the chair beside him. "It's me." He turned his head. His eyes, once sharp as winter wind, were cloudy with a confusion that never left him anymore. There had been a time when he could recite stories of our family back 7 generations. When he knew every face in every photograph. When he remembered the orchard before it had been planted. He had been the one who told my mother never to let me near it. But now he didn't even remember her name. I watched his gaze try to find me in the fog of his own mind. For a fleeting second, something sparked there, a glimmer of recognition. Then it faded. "Do you know me?" I whispered. His rocking chair creaked slowly back and forth. I didn't expect an answer, but then his mouth parted, and he breathed a single word. Raspy, wet, barely a sound at all. "Run." The rocking stopped. His body went still. I leaned forward, heart racing. "Granddad? What did you—" But the spark was gone. His eyes drifted back to the horizon, unfocused. He wouldn't speak again for the rest of my visit. I walked home with my thoughts churning thick and dark. My grandfather had not spoken in weeks, according to the nurse who helped him. And yet he had spoken to me, to warn me, to run. Run from what? From the orchard? Or from whatever I was becoming? The next full moon rose like a blade. I watched it from my window, the pale light cutting across my floor. The house felt too small, as if the walls were leaning in. My skin prickled. Every part of me knew what was coming. When the pull struck, it was harsher than ever. Not a whisper this time, but a yank, a deep tug behind my sternum. I tried to fight it. I failed. My feet carried me through the darkened streets, past sleeping houses, past the old mill, past the stone boundary wall that marked the orchard's edge. The moment I crossed it, a cold wind rose from nowhere and wrapped around me like a shroud. The orchard was awake. The fruit hung heavy and luminous, their pale glow flickering as if reacting to my presence. The trees were not still tonight. They swayed gently, though no breeze touched them. Their movements were deliberate, expectant. I stepped deeper. The grass whispered beneath my shoes, bending away from me. And then I heard it again. Eat. The voice curled into my skull like smoke. I clenched my teeth, swallowing the instinct to obey. "I know what you're doing," I said aloud, my breath trembling in the cold air. "You're taking pieces of me, taking memories." A ripple shuddered through the orchard, branches creaking. "Not taking, trading." The voice was clearer now, layered with countless tones, young and old, male and female, human and not. "Why?" I demanded. "Why me? Why anyone?" The answer came like a slow exhale. "We are hungry. We are full. We are growing." The contradictions tangled in my mind like roots. I backed away slowly, my pulse hammered. If I could just get out, if I could just reach the boundary. Something cold wrapped around my wrist. I gasped, stumbling. A branch, thin and pale, had bent down and hooked itself around me, its bark warm as living skin. I tore free, stumbling backward. Several fruits fell from the branch, landing at my feet with soft, wet thuds. One cracked open, its glowing flesh spilling onto the ground like luminescent blood. And from it rose a voice. Not the orchard's voice, a human voice. "Please," it whispered. "Let me remember, just for a moment." I staggered, my breath catching. The glow inside the broken fruit pulsed weakly, like a dying heartbeat. I knelt before I could stop myself. What are you?" The voice trembled. "I was someone once." The orchard shuddered as though annoyed. "Do not listen." But I already was. I couldn't look away from the glowing ruin in the grass. Inside it, I glimpsed something, shapes moving, shadows twisting. Memories. Someone's memories, writhing like trapped insects beneath glass. "What does the orchard do to you?" I whispered. "To all of you?" The fruit shivered, its voice breaking. "It keeps us. It feeds on us. It gives us to others." My stomach dropped. The orchard wasn't just harvesting memories. It was harvesting people. A sudden silence fell over the trees. Heavy, watchful, angry. Then the orchard spoke again, its voice a seething hiss. "Go home, child of forgetting, before we decide to finish what was begun long before you tasted our fruit." The wind died. The glow dimmed. The broken fruit went still and silent. I ran. I didn't stop until my lungs screamed, until the moon dipped low, until my feet carried me all the way back to my door. I slammed it shut behind me and locked every bolt. But the orchard's final words followed me like a shadow. Long before I tasted the fruit, long before my first memory, it had already begun. For days I tried to convince myself that what I'd heard from the cracked fruit wasn't real, that the voice had been some hallucination, some trick of the orchard meant to lure me back. But the tone of it haunted me, too human to ignore, too desperate to be fabricated. And the orchard's closing words, "Long before you tasted our fruit," stalked my thoughts like a shadow that didn't belong to me. What did it mean? What had begun before my first memory? Was the orchard tied to me in ways I had never understood? The questions gnawed at me relentlessly. I stopped going to work. I barely slept. I wandered the house like an echo of myself, jumping at every sound. On the fourth night, I found something strange. I had been digging through an old chest of my mother's belongings, half out of grief, half out of a hopeless attempt to anchor myself to real memories, when I uncovered a small wooden box. It was carved with symbols I didn't recognize, but the moment my fingers brushed them, a sharp pain stabbed behind my eyes, a headache that felt familiar, like something trying to surface. The box was locked. A slim, rusted keyhole stared up at me, unblinking. Inside the lid, faintly carved, were words in my mother's handwriting. "Don't open until you know who you are." My blood ran cold. I sat back, the box balanced on my knees, trying to steady my breathing. My mother had known something, known this, known what the orchard was doing to me, or what it had already done long before. Why had she never told me? Why had my grandfather warned me to stay away but never explained why? And why was a part of me, some deep, instinctive part, terrified of opening the box? That night, I dreamed of the orchard again. But this time, it wasn't glowing under the moon. It was burning. Flames clawed up the pale trunks like hungry animals, devouring bark that screamed as it charred. The fruit burst like eggs cracking, spilling memories that fled into the air, voices shrieking, laughing, weeping, chanting. The smoke twisted into shapes, faces, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all of them staring at me. One face pushed closer than the others. My mother's. Her eyes were wide and full of fear, her mouth opening and closing around a name she couldn't quite speak. I woke drenched in cold sweat. The box sat on my nightstand where I had left it, silent and patient. The moon was growing again. In 4 nights, it would be full. I knew I couldn't face the orchard unprepared again. I needed the truth. Every secret my family had buried. Every piece of myself I had lost long before I ever ate the orchard's fruit. So the next morning, I returned to my grandfather's house. He was in his chair again, though this time his head was bowed as if in restless sleep. The nurse told me he had been muttering during the night, words no one could make out. I kneeled beside him. "Granddad," I whispered, "I need you to tell me what you meant about running." His eyelids fluttered weakly. For a moment, just a moment, I saw clarity break through the fog, like moonlight piercing through cloud. "You're not meant to remember," he rasped. My breath caught. "Remember what?" His gaze drifted past me, staring at something behind my shoulder, something only he could see. "The first harvest," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "Granddad, what harvest?" He reached for my hand with trembling fingers. When he found it, his grip tightened with surprising strength. "They planted more than trees. They grew us." A chill erupted down my spine. "What do you mean us?" But his eyes were dimming again, the brief clarity slipping away. He muttered a few broken syllables, fragments of words, maybe names, and then sagged back into his chair, unconscious or lost to the fog entirely. I called the nurse, my heart hammering. She tried to revive him, but he only slumped deeper, breathing shallow and fragile. I left the house shaking. His words echoed louder the farther I walked. "They grew us," as if my family, the line I came from, had roots in that orchard. As if the orchard hadn't been planted by my ancestors, but had planted my ancestors. And me. The idea shredded through my thoughts like claws. It explained too much. Why the orchard called to me. Why its pull felt embedded in my bones. Why the memories felt familiar even when they weren't mine. Maybe they were mine. Maybe they all were. By the time I reached home, the sun had dipped low, bleeding into the horizon. I sat at the kitchen table with the wooden box in front of me, my fingers hovering over the carved lid. My heart hammered like a second pulse against my ribs. My mother had said not to open it until I knew who I was. But what if opening it was the only way to learn? My hands shook as I lifted the box. I tilted it, listening for any rattling inside. Nothing. The lock stared up at me like a small, patient eye. I didn't have the key, but I had a hammer. I paused only for a breath. Then I shattered the lock with one swing. The lid flew open with a splintering crack. Inside the box was a folded piece of parchment, old and yellowing. And beneath it, something else. Something small and metallic, reflecting a faint silver glint. My throat tightened as I unfolded the parchment. It was a birth record. Not mine. My mother's. Except, the name was wrong. The place was wrong. And the date of birth, 30 years before the orchard was planted, was impossible. I stared, numb, until my eyes drifted to the metallic object beneath the parchment. A ring. The same ring I had felt in the first memory the orchard had given me. My breath caught in my throat. Shaking violently, I lifted the ring from the box. It was warm, too warm. A whisper curled against the inside of my skull. Welcome home. The ring lay in my palm like a living thing, warm, thrumming faintly, as though it recognized the skin it touched. A sick nausea twisted in my gut. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, just a trick of memory, just the orchard playing games with me again. But the warmth didn't fade, and the whisper, "Welcome home," lingered behind my eyes like an afterimage burned too bright to blink away. I dropped the ring onto the table, stumbling back. It hit the wood with a soft metallic tap that sounded disturbingly like a heartbeat skipping.
No, y whisperat.
No, this isn't possible. But the evidence sat in front of me. My mother's impossible birth record. A ring from a memory I'd never lived. A box she left for me. A warning carved into its lid. Everything pointed in one direction, one I'd been trying desperately not to see. The orchard hadn't stolen any memories yet when I ate the first fruit. Not truly. Those first memories had come too easily, too clearly. As if my mind already knew how to hold them. As if they belonged to it. As if they were returning, not arriving. Couldn't breathe. The walls felt too close. The air too heavy. I backed into the living room, sank into a chair, and pressed my palms into my eyes. Think. But thinking only dredged up more questions. Why would my mother have hidden this? Why would my grandfather lose his memories long before age should have taken them? Why did the orchard call to me even when I resisted? And most terrifying of all, what am I? I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My thoughts churned like a storm, and every time I tried to close my eyes, I felt that ring pulsing through the darkness like a signal, like it was calling something, or calling me. Just before dawn, I took the ring outside and threw it as hard as I could into the trees behind my house. But even after it vanished into the brush, the warmth lingered in my palm, like an imprint burned into my skin. I didn't know what to do, so I went to the one place I swore I'd never return to. Not the orchard yet, my mother's grave. The cemetery sat at the edge of town, small and quiet, hemmed in by a fence that had long since begun rusting. Her headstone was simple. Her name, 2 dates, and an engraving of a crescent moon. She'd chosen the design herself before she died, though she never told me why. Now, looking at it, I felt a cold tightening in my chest. Had she known the orchard would come for me? Had she known it already had? I knelt in the dew-soaked grass and traced my fingers over the engraved moon. "I need answers," I whispered. "You knew something. You hid things from me. Why?" The wind stirred, soft and slow, brushing the back of my neck like a cold hand. I shivered. Grief pulsed through me, raw and sharp. I rested my forehead against the stone, pretending I could still feel her warmth through it. And then a voice. Not hers. Not the orchard's. A voice from behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I jolted, spinning around. A man stood between the rows of graves, half hidden by shadow. His clothes were old-fashioned, worn, and dusty. His face was thin, sunken, with cheeks hollowed by long hunger or long grief. His eyes were the strangest part, too reflective, too pale, catching the morning light like 2 small moons. He stepped forward slowly. "Not alone," he added quietly. "Not with what's coming." I backed away on instinct. "Who are you?" He stopped a few feet away, hands raised slightly as if trying not to frighten a wild animal. "A friend," he said. "If you let me be." "That's not an answer." "No," he murmured. "It isn't. But answers are dangerous things." His gaze dropped to the ground, then lifted again, heavier. "You've eaten the fruit, haven't you?" I stiffened. "How do you know that?" He gave a small, broken smile. "Because I ate it too." His voice cracked on the last word, as if it cost him something to speak it. A long silence stretched between us, filled only by wind and distant crows. I forced myself to speak. What does the orchard want with me? His expression twisted with pity. Or regret. Or both. It doesn't want anything, he whispered. It needs. Needs what? Roots, he said softly. Blood. Memory. He paused. And return. My stomach dropped. Return. He nodded. You've felt it, haven't you? The pull. The recognition. The memories that fit too easily. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. What are they? I whispered. Why do they feel like mine? His eyes darkened. Because they are yours, he said. Cold washed through me. No, I said hoarsely. They belong to other people. I saw their lives. I felt what they felt. You felt what you felt, he corrected gently. Lives you lived. Faces you wore. Names you had long before this one. I shook my head violently.
No.
No, that's impossible. He stepped closer, slow and cautious. The orchard doesn't plant trees, he said. It plants us, and each time our time ends, we return to it. We feed it. We become part of its root. And eventually, when enough years have passed, his voice trembled. It grows us again. The world lurched beneath my feet. You're lying. I wish I were. I stumbled back until I hit my mother's gravestone. My breath came fast and shallow, panic rising. If that's true, I said, why do I remember anything at all? Why am I me? You're not supposed to, he murmured. The orchard usually wipes it all. But sometimes, his gaze dropped to my hands. Sometimes we eat before we're ready. Sometimes memories come back too soon. I felt sick. My mother's warning. My grandfather's dying clarity. The orchard whispering, welcome home. The man crouched in front of me, voice low and urgent. You need to leave town before the full moon. Once it's full, the orchard will finish what it started. It will take the rest of you, and you won't come back from that. I stared at him, shaking. Why are you helping me? I whispered. His face twisted. Pain flickered across his features. Because once, he said, you helped me. My heart stopped. What? He reached into his coat and pulled something out. A faded photograph. He handed it to me with trembling fingers. When I saw it, the world tilted sideways. It was me, not me. A man who looked like me. Exactly like me. Same face. Same eyes. Same jawline. Standing beside this stranger. Decades ago. My fingers went numb. I told you, he whispered. We've known each other a long time. I looked up at him, tears stinging my eyes. What did I used to be? He took a slow, shaky breath. Someone who didn't want to return, he said. Someone who tried to run. He swallowed hard. And someone the orchard came after. The wind fell silent. The sky seemed to hold its breath. The stranger leaned closer, voice barely audible. You have one last chance. Don't go back. Don't let it finish the harvest. His eyes locked onto mine. Pale, haunted, pleading. You have to choose a different life this time. He stood, stepping back. But if you return to that orchard on the full moon, his voice cracked, you won't come back out. And before I could ask anything else, before I could breathe, he turned and disappeared through the graves, swallowed by morning fog. I sat frozen, the photograph shaking in my hand. And for the first time since this began, I felt the orchard watching me in daylight. I didn't go home right away. I wandered town in a haze, the stranger's words echoing through my skull like a broken bell. Every face I passed shifted in my vision. Sometimes familiar, sometimes foreign. Sometimes like I'd known them all once in lives I had lost and lives I hadn't lived yet. The world felt wrong. No, I felt wrong inside it. By the time I reached my house, the sun had dipped low, and the sky had turned the bruised color of old fruit. I locked the door behind me, slid down the wall, and pressed my face into my hands. What was left of me? What was mine? The ring I had thrown into the trees the night before suddenly felt like a mistake. Not because I wanted it back. God, no. but because losing track of it felt dangerous, as though it belonged to something that knew how to find its way home. I checked every door and window twice. My hands shook the whole time. The stranger's warning kept repeating. Once the moon is full, the orchard will finish what it started. 3 days until the full moon. 3 days until something inside me unraveled. 3 days until the orchard claimed whatever I was, whatever I had been. I barely slept that night. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were thick with roots coiling through my veins, memories blooming beneath my skin like fruit swelling on a branch. Faces flickered behind my eyes, dozens, hundreds, some crying, some smiling, some screaming, and each one tugged at me like they were trying to climb back into my mind. I woke gasping, tangled in my sheets, the taste of cold fruit still thick on my tongue. The next day brought rain, hard, heavy sheets of it, but even the storm couldn't quiet the orchard's pull. It tugged constantly at the back of my mind, a steady throbbing like a second heartbeat. I tried to distract myself. I scrubbed the kitchen. I went through old boxes. I paced until my legs ached. But the orchard was always there, watching, waiting, growing. By afternoon, I found myself staring out the window toward the distant ridge where the orchard lay hidden. Even through the storm clouds, the land felt awake, expectant, like something beneath the soil was turning over in its sleep. Sometime that evening, the doorbell rang. The sound hit me like a gunshot. No one visited anymore. Most people had drifted away after my mother died, and I had pushed the rest away myself. I froze. The bell rang again. Long, insistent, almost panicked. I approached the door slowly. "Who is it?" I called. A shaky voice answered. "It's me, the man from the cemetery." I unlocked the door so fast my fingers fumbled. The stranger stumbled inside, drenched from the rain. His skin looked paler than before, almost translucent like thin paper lit from behind. He leaned against the wall, panting. "They know," he gasped. "They know I warned you." Cold crept into my spine. "Who knows?" He swallowed hard. When he raised his head, his eyes gleamed with a wild, terrified shine. "The orchard," he whispered. I locked the door behind him. He shuddered. Rain dripped from his coat onto my floorboards, each drop catching the dim light in a too bright shimmer. He looked thinner than he had at the cemetery. His skin stretched too tight over his bones, his breath uneven. "What happened to you?" I asked. He sank into a chair, clutching his arms around himself. "When I left you," he said softly, "I went home, or what's left of a home." He stared at me, and for a moment his gaze seemed to slip, like something behind it was stirring. "And the orchard reached for me." A tremor ran through him. "I tried to run," he whispered. "I always run, but it's stronger now. It's waking up. It's remembering." I sat across from him, the room too silent. "What is the orchard?" I asked. "What is it really?" He gave a rattling laugh, thin, brittle, painful. "It's us," he said. "It always was." I shook my head. "I still don't understand." "I'll show you," he murmured. "But you have to be strong." He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in a cloth. My stomach seized. "Is that?" He unwrapped it. The ring. The one I had thrown away. He set it on the table between us. Its surface pulsed faintly, as if something inside it breathed. "It came back," he whispered. "Found its way to me, or I to it. Hard to say." I stared at the ring, unable to look away. "Why is it doing this?" "Because it's part of you," he said. "Of all of us who've been grown. Of every life we lived before." His voice dropped to a whisper. "That ring has passed through your hands dozens of times, in lives long buried." Silence stretched between us. He leaned forward suddenly and grabbed my wrist. His grip was ice-cold and desperate. "You asked what you were before," he rasped. "Do you really want to know?" My mouth went dry. "Yes." The stranger's face twisted. "Then listen carefully," he said. "Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it." He took a shuddering breath. "We weren't born in the orchard." His fingers tightened painfully on my wrist. "We were made." The room seemed to shrink. Maid, I whispered. He nodded slowly. The orchard grows bodies, shells, children with no past. But it needs something to put into them. He released my wrist and tapped the ring lightly. Memories. Lives. The ones we lived before. Every time we die, we're folded back into the orchard. It breaks us down. Uses us again. Replants us. Rebuilds us. His eyes met mine, wide and glowing faintly in the dim kitchen. You and I, we've lived 100 lives. Maybe more. And every time, the orchard takes us back. Every time, it grows us again. My heart hammered. Why? I whispered. Because nothing that grows wants to die, he said. Not even a memory. A shudder ran through me. He leaned closer. You asked what you were before. I nodded, throat too tight for words. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. You were the first. My blood went cold. The first, I echoed. He nodded, eyes wide with something reverent and terrified. The first memory the orchard ever harvested. The first life it ever grew again. It's been trying to perfect you for generations. Always pulling you back. Always trying to remake you. The ring pulsed again, stronger this time, as if agreeing. My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear. Why me? I choked out. Because you were the first one who tried to kill it, he whispered. The first one who learned what it was. The first one who fought it. His breath trembled. You set the orchard on fire. A violent chill ripped through me, because I had dreamed that exact scene. Not a dream, a memory.
No, Eerie Sparat.
That wasn't me. I saw that in a dream. A nightmare. He shook his head slowly. It wasn't a dream, he said. It was your first life. The room suddenly felt too small, too loud, too bright. I clutched the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. The stranger watched me with hollow eyes. And now, he said softly, the orchard wants you back. The lights flickered. The ring pulsed again. And from outside, through the storm, through the darkness, I heard it. A whisper threading through the rain. Come home. The nights began folding into one another after that, as if the Moonfall Orchard had slipped its fingers into the seams of time and tugged. I stopped counting how long I'd been there. Days felt thin and unreal. Nights felt thick, too thick like syrup or blood. I slept in the caretaker's shack, if what I did could be called sleep. My dreams were no longer mine. They were memories of strangers I'd never met, people who might not even be alive anymore, people who may never have existed. Each time I closed my eyes, their lives pressed against the inside of my skull like they were trying to hatch. Sometimes I woke choking on someone else's grief. Sometimes someone else's laughter echoed in my ribs. Once, I woke with tears running down my face for a wife I never had. The orchard hummed every night, and the moon hung low, swollen and heavy, as if it barely had the strength to pull itself across the sky. The next time the moon ripened enough for the fruit to glow, I found myself wandering toward the trees without meaning to. My feet moved like they remembered a path I hadn't walked. Maybe one of the borrowed memories was slipping into my muscles, puppeteering me. The fruit gleamed like pale lanterns suspended in the air. I felt their pull. And then I saw her, the woman from my visions, the woman whose memories I had tasted in flashes, stood between two twisted branches, her hair silvered by moonlight. She looked exactly as she had appeared in the shards of thought I had swallowed. Tall, solemn, with eyes that reflected too much knowledge. I froze. She looked alive. Her skin wasn't the washed-out translucence of ghosts. Her breath fogged the cold air. Her shadow trembled on the grass. Finally, she said softly. My throat dried. You're real. She smiled, but not kindly. Real enough. I stepped forward despite every instinct screaming at me to turn and run. What are you? I asked instead. A memory given shape, she whispered. Or maybe a ghost wearing memory as skin. Does it matter? Why do I remember you? I asked. You ate me, she answered. My stomach dropped. That's not. I would never. You consumed the moon fruit, she said, tilting her head. And inside it was a sliver of me, of my life, of my death, of what I saw. She stepped closer. And now I am growing in you. Felt like my bones were shrinking under her voice. Growing in me? I didn't know whether she meant metaphorically or literally. The orchard wind shifted. The trees seemed to lean in closer. Tell me what happened to you, I said. It was the only thing I could manage. She looked toward the far end of the orchard, toward the deeper dark. I came here for answers, she said. Just like you. And the orchard welcomed me. It gave me more than I asked for. Her fingers brushed a hanging fruit. It shivered and brightened beneath her touch. When I tasted my first moon fruit, I saw the truth. What truth? She turned to me, eyes catching the moonlight like a blade catches flame. That no one plants this orchard, she whispered. It plants you. A cold line slid down my spine. I don't understand, I said. You will, she murmured, and her smile cracked slightly, showing something too tired, too ancient. She reached for my hand. I tried to pull away, but she caught my wrist with a grip stronger than it had any right to be. Stronger than memory, stronger than flesh. The moon above us pulsed, a slow, luminous heartbeat. And then she pushed something into my mind. Not a memory, a message. It hit me like a hammer between the eyes. The orchard wasn't just feeding me memories. It was sewing them together, building something inside me, something that wasn't me. When she finally let go, I crumpled to the ground, gasping. She knelt beside me. It's too late to undo what you've eaten, she said softly. But it's not too late to choose what you become. What am I becoming? I whispered, horrified. She brushed her fingers over my temple, and for the briefest second, I saw myself from her point of view. My skin faintly glowing, my eyes catching moonlight like mirrors, my breath exhaling thin, silver fog. I jerked back. No, you're ripening, she said. I pressed both palms to the grass, breathing hard, trying not to scream. The moon fruit dangled above us, swaying as though caught in a non-existent breeze. The orchard hummed louder, welcoming, hungry. The woman stood again, her shape flickering, as if she were fraying around the edges. I don't have long, she said quietly. When the moon sets, I fade. But tonight you can still ask me anything. She looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. What do you want to know before you change? My heart hammered. My throat tightened. There were too many questions. Too many horrors curled under my skin, waiting to be named. But I forced myself to speak. Why me? I whispered. Her expression changed, almost pity. The orchard wind stilled. And her voice, when it came, was a terrible kind of gentle. Because you came here at the right time, she said. And because something needed to grow. The moon throbbed overhead. I swallowed hard. Grow into what? I breathed. She stepped back, her figure blurring slightly, like a smudge on glass. Ask the trees, she whispered. They remember everything. I turned to look at the twisted, silver-lit orchard. The branches shifted, and somewhere deeper inside the darkness, something huge exhaled. The trees remembered, and they wanted me to remember too. The trees began whispering before I even stood up. It wasn't wind. It wasn't leaves brushing together. It was language, dry, ancient, rustling through the branches like a prayer spoken by 1,000 forgotten mouths. At first it was only fragments. Not yet almost opening ripe, then the voices braided together into something coherent enough to understand. Come deeper, I backed away instinctively, but the orchard didn't let me go. Moonlight pooled at my feet, a pale tether that felt almost physical, pulling me toward the darker rows of trees. The woman, my phantom, my parasite, my guide, watched me with a sad, knowing expression. You won't be able to resist much longer, she murmured. The orchard calls its own. I'm not one of its own, I snapped, even though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. She stepped closer, her outline flickering in and out like a candle on the edge of going out. You ate the fruit, she said softly, and the fruit eats you back. I didn't reply, couldn't. My heartbeat was no longer steady. It pulsed in slow, heavy thuds that didn't feel entirely human. A cold pressure pushed outward from within my ribs, as if vines were coiling around my lungs. Follow them, she urged.
No, Ibrata.
Not yet. Tell me what they want. The woman closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glowed very faintly, like a reflection of starlight on water. They want continuation, she whispered. They want memory with legs. A pause. And they want a mouth to speak through. I shivered. Speak what? Their story, she said. And their hunger. The orchard groaned around us. An old wooden, living sound that shook the ground under my palms. I won't be part of this, I said, but it sounded like begging. She gave a fragile smile. It's too late to refuse. The change has already begun. I tried to deny it, but the cold truth slid through me. Every breath tasted metallic. My fingertips tingled. My shadow no longer moved exactly when I did. It lagged by a fraction of a second. And beneath my skin, faint glowing veins pulsed. No,
No, no.
I stumbled back, clutching my arms. What did you see? I demanded, my voice shaking. In your visions, in your memories, what happens to people who eat too much of the fruit? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Tell me, I hissed. Tell me what I'm becoming. Her voice was barely audible. A seed. The world tilted. A what? A seed? She repeated more firmly now. Moon fruit grows from a memory of a life. The orchard plants those memories inside you until you're full. Then you sprout. Then you root. Then you are no longer you. My throat locked. You mean I'll become a tree? No, she whispered. Something the trees use. Something between tree and human. Something that keeps the orchard alive. I pressed my palms to my temples. I need to get out, I breathed. You can leave the orchard's land, she said. But the orchard will leave with you. A sharp pain stabbed behind my eyes. Images flooded me with no warning. A figure walking away from the orchard. Their skin glowing. Their bones cracking open like pods. Roots spilling from their spine. Their mouth opening in a scream that became a branch. I fell to my knees, gasping. The woman knelt beside me, placing her palm gently on my back. Your change hasn't settled, she said. You still have time to choose how it happens. How? I croaked. Go to the heart of the orchard, she said. There is something that grows there, something older than any tree here. If you face it, maybe you'll shape what grows inside you instead of letting it shape you. The orchard whispered again. Deeper, 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 the woman's outline was dissolving. Her legs already fading to transparent mist. The moon is setting, she murmured. I won't be able to guide you anymore. Wait! I reached for her. My hand passed through hers like smoke. Remember, she said, don't run from what's inside you. Understand it. If you run, it will root where you fall. Her face flickered, her features unraveling. Please stay, I whispered, but she was already dimming, her shape scattering into drifting, memory-soaked dust. Her voice came one last time, stretched thin across the air. Find the heart tree, before it finds you. And then she was gone. The orchard fell silent. The moon crawled lower, and I was alone with the thing growing inside me. I turned toward the deeper rows of trees. The darkness there was thicker than shadow, dense, almost alive. The orchard waited, and I stepped into it. The deeper I walked, the more the orchard changed. At first it was just subtle things. The fruit hung lower, as if bowing under a weight of secrets. The branches arched overhead, knitting together like ribs. The ground softened underfoot, no longer dirt but something spongy, breathing. But soon the changes weren't subtle anymore. The trees grew closer together, their trunks twisting inward, forming narrow corridors that felt almost intentional. The air grew colder, but not the natural cold of night, the cold of something watching you from just behind the next breath. Every time I blinked, I felt the orchard shift, and beneath my skin, the glowing threads pulsed brighter. My heartbeat had almost entirely changed. It no longer felt like a beat. It felt like a slow opening and closing, a blooming. I pressed my hand to my chest. My ribs felt pliable. Wrong. No, I whispered, as if denial could undo the inevitable. But the orchard whispered back, louder now. Open, open, open. The voice wasn't external anymore. It was inside me. Took me a long time to realize the path I followed wasn't a path at all. The orchard was guiding me. Every time I tried to turn away, branches lowered, forming barriers. When I resisted too much, a sharp pain flared behind my eyes until I stumbled back onto the invisible route. I was being herded, led, prepared. Something ahead of me pulsed with a low, deep rhythm, like a second moon buried under the earth. The heart tree. I felt its presence long before I saw it. It was calling, no, summoning. And the thing growing inside me responded eagerly. My breath shortened. My skin prickled with a strange, electric hunger. I felt the orchard tugging at the edges of my mind, like fingers prying open a clenched fist. Stop, I begged. Please. But the orchard didn't understand please. It understood hunger. It understood cycles. It understood ripening. After what felt like hours or maybe minutes, time twisted strangely here. The trees abruptly pulled back. An open clearing appeared, perfect and circular, as though carved with precision older than tools. Moonlight pooled into it like liquid silver. And there, at the center, stood the heart tree. I stopped breathing. It was nothing like the orchard trees. This one was enormous, thick as a house, its bark smooth and pale like bone. Its branches stretched outward in a perfect ring, not random or organic but symmetrical, deliberate. Each branch held fruit that didn't glow like lanterns. They burned, not with fire, but with memories so intense they felt radioactive. I stepped closer, compelled. The air around the heart tree vibrated with presence. And then something horrible clicked into place inside me. I wasn't here to learn anything. I was here to become something. The memories inside me, foreign, stolen, heavy, flickered faster. Faces I'd never seen. Hands I'd never held. Deaths I never lived. They pulsed in time with the heart tree. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. Stop, stop, stop. The orchard's chorus rose around me. Open, 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 it's time, it's time, it's time. The glowing threads under my skin flared so bright I could see them through my shirt. I screamed. My spine arched backward, a violent, involuntary movement. Something inside me pressed upward, toward my throat, like it wanted out. No, not out. Open. My vision blurred, then sharpened to impossible clarity. The heart tree leaned toward me, not physically but mentally, like a colossal mind pressing against my own. And it spoke, not in words, in memories, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands. All the lives the orchard had harvested, all the people who had eaten moonfruit, all the minds the heart tree had grown inside. I saw them all. I lived them all. Every horrific detail, every pain, every terror, every surrender. It tore through me like an ocean made of knives. My scream broke into a ragged gasp. I felt my ribs loosen again, like they wanted to peel open, like petals.
No, irraspat.
I'm not ready. But the heart tree didn't care about readiness, cared about continuation. Open, the orchard whispered from all sides. Open, the thing inside me whispered from my bones. Open, my body bowed forward. My palms slammed against the ground. And then a voice, soft,
Familiar.
desperate. Don't let it take you. I snapped my head up. The woman, my ghost, stood at the edge of the clearing. But she shouldn't have been there. The moon was nearly gone. She should have faded. Yet she stood, solidifying in patches, flickering like a failing lantern but still present. You said you couldn't stay, I gasped. She shook her head. I can't. But I can fight it, for a moment. The heart tree darkened, dimming its burning fruit. The orchard hissed, like leaves scraping against teeth. She stepped forward. You're stronger than you think, she said. You don't have to open. Pain shot through me, sharp, furious, as if the orchard itself struck me. I can't stop it, I cried. It's too much. You can. Her voice cut through the whispering like a blade. Listen to me. The orchard wants to use you, but you can shape yourself. You can choose what grows. How? I choked out. Her flickering form approached until she knelt in front of me, her hands hovering inches from my face. With memory, she said, but not theirs. Her glowing eyes softened. Yours. I stared at her, trembling, half ripped open. What memory? I whispered. The one thing the orchard can't touch, she said. The truth of who you were before this place. Something inside me recoiled violently at her words. The orchard didn't want me remembering myself. The heart tree pulsed hard enough to shake the clearing. The pain surged worse than before. Hold on, she begged. Just one memory. One that belongs only to you. I tried. God, I tried. But the memories flooding my mind weren't mine. They were the orchard's. Strangers. Victims. Roots. Branches. Moonfruit. Blooming. Think? She whispered, gripping my shoulders. Before you ate the fruit. Before the orchard. Before this night. I gasped, shaking violently. The orchard howled in my bones. Remember, she urged, who you were. I closed my eyes. Darkness. Pain. Noise. And then a flicker. Small. Soft. Real. My voice, my younger voice, laughing. A field. Sunlight. A hand in mine. Someone I loved. Warmth. Human warmth. My memory. Not the orchard's. I grabbed it like a lifeline. My chest tightened, but not painfully, like something sealing, like something grounding. The glowing lines under my skin began to dim. The woman gasped. Yes, keep going. I held the memory tighter. My memory of warmth, of sunlight, of me. The orchard shrieked. 1,000 branches scraping the sky in rage. The heart tree pulsed violently, but I held on. And for the first time since entering the orchard, the thing inside me hesitated. It did not open. Not yet. The hesitation inside me, that single stutter in the orchard's hunger, became a crack. A fragile, hairline fracture between what the orchard wanted and what I wanted. And through that crack, my memory expanded. Sunlight, warm wind on skin, the smell of dust on a summer road. A voice calling my name, not in fear, not in command, but in love. I clung to that warmth like it was air and I had been drowning for hours. The orchard felt it. It recoiled as if burned. The glowing threads under my skin flickered violently, spasming, trying to dim the memory, to crush it, to drown it beneath the tidal wave of stolen lives. But I held on. I clenched my fists into the earth as if anchoring myself against a storm. The orchard's whispering rose into a furious chorus. Not yours, not yours, not yours, let go, let go, let go. I forced the memory forward, pushing it like a wedge into the suffocating mass of alien visions. It's mine, I whispered, teeth gritted. It's mine. The woman, what was left of her, let out a trembling breath. Good, she murmured. You're weakening it. The earth trembled beneath me, the heart tree swelling with a violent pulse. Its burning fruit dimmed to a feverish dark red glow. The orchard shrieked again, this time not with hunger, with frustration. I pressed harder. The memory grew stronger, clearer. That warm hand in mine, soft, steady, human, held me in place, kept me from unraveling. I remember, I whispered. I remember who I was. The woman smiled, a flicker of something bright and proud. But then her expression hardened. Hold on, she warned. The orchard struck. A blast of pain tore through me so abruptly my vision blanched white. My back arched, ribs straining outward again, trying to split. The thing inside me, the half-formed seed, lashed out in desperation. Open, 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 open now. I slammed the memory into it, and it recoiled again. This time the hit was deeper. My ribs twitched back into place. The glowing under my skin sputtered. I tasted blood, but I was still me, still here, still refusing. The orchard screamed. Not with voices, but with the sound of trees groaning, leaves thrashing, branches grinding against bark like teeth. The heart tree twisted its massive trunk slightly, its surface rippling like flesh. The air grew dense, suffocating. You're making it angry, the woman whispered. Good, I hissed. Her flickering outline brightened for a second. Then do more. You need another memory. A stronger one. I don't think I have more. You do, she insisted. Everyone does. Reach deeper. Pain speared through my skull, the orchard punishing me for resisting. My hands dug into the soil until my nails tore. Another memory. Another piece of myself. I dragged my mind through the fog of stolen visions, through the orchard's drowning sea, searching, and then a voice, soft,
Familiar.
calling me home. Not the sunlit hand this time, not warmth, something older, something from childhood. A lullaby, off-key, tired, comforting. My mother's voice. The orchard hit me with a wave of nausea. It hated this memory, clawed at it, tried to dissolve it. I held it anyway. I whispered the first broken lines of the lullaby under my breath. My voice shook, but the memory didn't. The glowing under my skin faded another degree. My heartbeat, the strange blooming rhythm, stuttered sharply. A crack split through the pressure inside me, like an egg fracturing. The orchard snarled. The heart tree pulsed so violently the ground shuddered. Keep going, the woman cried. I pressed my forehead into the earth, gripping the soil with both gouged hands, anchoring myself to reality. My name, I whispered. My name is... But the orchard struck again before I could finish. A wave of agony crashed through my chest, so sharp, so deep, I choked. My ribs strained outward a third time. A glowing fissure crawled across my skin like a vine of light. No, no, no. I forced the lullaby louder, my voice breaking. The orchard howled back, its rage nearly splitting my skull. The woman grabbed my face with both flickering hands, trying to steady me, her touch like cold wind. Hold on. You're winning. Don't let it open you. My entire body shook. The glowing fissure pulsed. My bones felt soft, too soft, like they wanted to unfurl. The orchard roared. Ripe, 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 open now. I screamed back, it's my mind. The fissure froze, then dimmed, then sealed like a wound closing. The heart tree let out a groaning, furious pulse that rattled the clearing. The orchard recoiled in every direction. And inside me, the half-formed seed, the thing the orchard had been growing for the first time, stopped pushing, stopped blooming, stopped opening. It curled inward like a frightened animal, no longer expanding. The woman exhaled shakily. You did it, she whispered. You stopped the opening. My chest burned. My vision blurred. I could barely breathe, but I was still me. I pushed myself up onto trembling arms. The orchard hissed from all sides, a furious, writhing chorus. The heart tree shook, shedding sparks of burning memory fruit that hit the ground and sizzled. You've angered it, the woman said quietly. I wiped blood from my lips and stared at the massive, ancient tree. Good, I said hoarse, because now it's my turn. The orchard fell silent. The heart tree's burning fruit flickered, and the woman stared at me with a mixture of fear and hope. What are you going to do? She whispered. I rose to my feet, swaying but unbroken. The glowing threads under my skin were dim now, contained, controlled. For the first time since entering the Moonfall Orchard, I felt something like power instead of helplessness. I'm going to finish this, I said, and I walked toward the heart tree. The ground trembled under each step I took toward the heart tree. Not like an earthquake, more like a warning. The orchard didn't understand why I was still moving, why I was still standing, why I wasn't opening. I felt its confusion ripple through the branches, the leaves, the soil itself. Confusion twisted into fear. Fear sharpened into anger. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the enormous, bone-pale trunk towering before me. The thing at the center of everything, the source, the mouth, the memory hoard, the first and last hunger. The heart tree. It loomed like a cathedral built by something that had never seen a human and only half understood the idea of shape. This bark wasn't wood. It was too smooth, too white, too faintly warm. Like carved bone. Like a ribcage. The burning fruits dangled above me, each one pulsing with a rhythm that matched the orchard's whispering breath. But they weren't whispering now. They were holding their breath, watching me, waiting. The woman stood at my back, or what was left of her. Her shape flickered wildly, losing chunks to the thinning moonlight. "You must be careful," she warned. "It can't kill you outright. Not while the seed inside you is unripe, but it can crush your mind. Break it, corrupt it until you can't tell your thoughts from its roots." I exhaled a shaky breath. "At this point, I'm not sure there's a difference." "There is," she insisted, her flickering hand brushing my shoulder without touching. "Because you remember who you are. You can't take that back unless you let it." Her words steadied me. I stepped closer. My palm lifted. I didn't remember deciding to touch the heart tree. My hand simply moved, drawn toward the surface as if magnetized. "No," the woman said sharply. "Not yet." But it was too late. My fingertips pressed into the bark. It wasn't hard. It was soft, like skin. A cold shock shot up my arm, lightning fast, crawling into my veins. The glowing lines under my skin flared again, fighting to reconnect to the tree's rhythm. The orchard gasped. Not metaphorically, I heard it. 1,000 trees inhaled at once. And then the heart tree spoke. Not in whispers, not in memories. In a single, crushing, mind-splitting voice. "Open." The command hit me like a hammer. My knees buckled. My ribs strained outward again. The seed inside me surged violently, pushing, desperate to bloom under the heart tree's call. I almost opened. Almost. But I slammed my hand harder into the bark, grounding myself with pain. "No," I growled through clenched teeth. "You don't get to take me." The heart tree didn't speak again in words. It didn't need to. It flooded me. A tidal wave of memory crashed into my mind, overwhelming everything. Not memories of victims. Not lives collected. Not the orchard's whispers. Its own memory. Its origin. Its birth. Its hunger. I was somewhere else. Not a clearing, not a night, not the orchard. I saw a meteor streaking across a black sky. But it wasn't rock. It wasn't fire. It was seed. A seed the size of a house, glowing with cold silver light, trailing ribbons of pulsing memory behind it like a comet's tail. It fell into a forest. A normal forest. Splintering trees cracking the ground. And when it hit, it opened. Pale roots exploded outward, burrowing through soil, through stone, through everything. They pierced the minds of every living thing in the forest. Birds, animals, people. Harvesting memories. Feeding. Learning. Becoming. The forest twisted into the first orchard. Humans wandered into it, ate the strange glowing fruit, remembered things older than planets. The orchard spread. It adapted. It waited. I saw centuries flash like sparks. And then I saw it create its first heart tree. A fusion of the seed's core and a human host who had eaten too many memories. A being that wasn't alive or dead. A nexus of every mind the orchard had consumed. And then I saw dozens more. Hundreds. Each orchard with its own heart. Each one feeding the next. This orchard was one of many. The meteor wasn't the start. It was a fragment. A splinter. One shard of something incomprehensibly larger. And now it wanted me. I stumbled back, breaking contact. The clearing snapped back into focus. The woman stared at me, horrified. "What did you see?" she whispered. My mouth felt numb. My thoughts felt too big for my skull. "It's not a tree," I croaked. "It's not even alive." She swallowed. "What is it?" "A memory parasite," I whispered. "An organism that feeds on consciousness, on experience, on everything we are. And it grows by planting itself inside people, turning them into vessels, turning their minds into soil." The woman's face crumpled. "I thought as much," she said softly. But hearing it, I shook my head.
No.
"You don't understand." I stared at the heart tree, which pulsed with slow, patient hunger. This orchard isn't isolated. There are others. Thousands.
Med million.
Spread across continents. Across worlds. The woman blinked. Worlds. The seed didn't originate here. I whispered. It travels. It lands. It feeds. It grows. Then it launches pieces of itself outward, like spores cast into space. The orchard rustled angrily, sensing its secrets escaping. The heart tree hissed, a sound like sap boiling. The woman stepped back. So what do you plan to do? I looked down at my glowing veins, at the seed curled inside me, at the thing that almost bloomed. I'm going to break the cycle. How? She whispered. I met her fading, flickering gaze. By killing the heart tree. The orchard screeched, a violent, ear-splitting shriek. The ground shook so hard I nearly fell. Branches whipped through the air. Fruit cracked open like eggs. Light spilled like blood. The orchard's fury roared through the clearing. You will open and spread US. I steadied myself. No, I said. I choose my own bloom. The woman trembled, her form unraveling as the last sliver of moonlight faded. Be careful, she whispered. You only get one chance. Then she was gone. Completely. The clearing darkened. The heart tree towered before me, pulsing like a colossal organ, and I stepped toward it, ready to strike. The moon had sunk lower, a pale coin slipping behind the dark treetops, and for a moment the orchard seemed to exhale, like the trees themselves were relieved that their brief duty was over. I should have left. I should have run until my lungs tore open. But something inside me tugged, a hook buried somewhere behind my ribs, pulling me deeper between the rows of silver-lit trees. I couldn't tell anymore which memories in my head belonged to me. The orchard had begun to rearrange them. Some pushed forward, some buried, some twisted slightly, like someone had run fingers through a deck of cards and left everything out of order. Faces blurred, voices overlapped. The strongest images were not mine at all. A hand gripping an axe, a child hiding beneath tangled roots, a woman whispering into a moonlit well. I felt all of them pressing, begging for attention. I stumbled forward, feeling the damp earth cling to my shoes like hands. When I reached the center of the orchard, the ground dipped into a shallow bowl of land. Moonlight pooled there, unnaturally bright despite the moon nearly sinking beyond the hills. That silver glow illuminated a single tree, much older, much darker than the others. Its bark was blackened, its branches twisted like gnarled fingers clawing at the heavens, and beneath it stood the girl, or the woman, or the memory of her. I recognized her even though I shouldn't have. She was the one from the memory that wasn't mine, the one where the lantern glowed and someone whispered my name from a shadowed doorway. She was barefoot, her hair long enough to brush the ground, silvered like frost. Her eyes reflected the moon as though they held a second one inside them. You're late, she said. Her voice hit me like déjà vu. Too familiar, painfully familiar. I felt my throat tighten. Who are you? I asked, though part of me already knew. She tilted her head slightly, studying me the way someone studies a wound to see how deep it goes. You've eaten too much, she murmured. They always do at first. They? I whispered. Or me. Her faint smile didn't answer anything. Instead, she stepped closer, the grass bending around her feet like it recoiled from her. The orchard is waking, she said. It remembers. A cold pulse rolled through the ground. I felt it vibrate up my legs, into my chest, into my skull. The trees around us shivered as though caught in a silent wind. I grasped my head as a surge of memories, hundreds, crashed behind my eyes. A woman screaming, a man burying a box, a child lifting a glowing fruit, a stranger wandering the orchard under a harvest moon. Centuries of stolen lives flooded through me. Stop, I gasped. Please stop. You asked for this? The girl whispered. You came here. No, I didn't know. You wanted to forget yourself, she said. And the orchard heard. Her words paralyzed me. Forget myself? Is that why I came here? Was I running from something or someone? I reached into my own mind like searching a room gone dark, but every time I found something familiar, it slid away, replaced with someone else's life. I didn't even know anymore if I had come willingly or if the memories had called me back here. What are you? I whispered. She walked past me, her hair drifting like smoke. "I'm what's left," she said. "What remains when the orchard is done taking." I turned toward her. "Taking what?" She raised a hand toward the old tree. Something shifted in its trunk. An opening, or perhaps a mouth, widening silently. The moonlight brightened, sharp as a blade. "Yours," she said. "Your memories. Your past. Your name." Panic clawed through me. "No, no, that can't be." "Why do you think the fruit grows only under the full moon?" she asked softly. "The orchard drinks the light the way it drinks you. Everything it gives has a cost." My heart hammered so violently I could feel it in my teeth. I stepped backward. The trees seemed to lean toward me. "I'm leaving," I said. "I don't want this anymore." Her expression softened. Not pity, but something close. "You already belong to it," she said. "You felt the pull. That means it marked you long ago."
No, Ibrata.
No, that's not true. But somewhere deeper inside me, beneath the noise of foreign memories, I felt it. The orchard had always been part of me, or I had always been part of it. A tiny thread connecting me to something vast and ancient, something that hummed like a distant storm. I turned to run. The orchard moved. Branches twisted downward. Roots heaved up from the soil. Shadows stretched into thin, grasping arms. I sprinted, stumbling over rising patches of earth. My breath tore through my lungs. I didn't dare look behind me. I could hear the creaking, cracking, shifting as the trees rearranged themselves with deliberate intention. The orchard wasn't just alive. It was hunting. I ran until the moon vanished completely behind the hills, plunging the orchard into darkness, so absolute it swallowed the path ahead. I slammed into a tree trunk and fell, scraping my palms on roots that felt like rib bones under the soil. Something brushed the back of my neck. I froze. A whisper, soft, breathless, slipped past my ear. "Don't run from what you are." I scrambled forward, clawing through the dark, until my hands found open ground. I pulled myself out of the trees, collapsing onto the field beyond. When I looked back, the orchard was motionless again, silent, innocent. But the girl now stood at its edge, her white eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You'll come back," she said. I shook my head violently. "I won't." Her smile was almost sad. "You already are." And then she lifted her hand. Something inside my mind cracked open. Dozens, hundreds of new memories surged into me, fresh and burning. A lifetime spent tending the orchard. A night of blood beneath the roots. A moonlit ceremony with fruit carved into symbols. A promise whispered by someone who wore my face. And then a final memory. One that struck so deeply it felt like my bones remembered it. Me as a child, sitting beneath the old black tree, holding a glowing moonfruit, and a slender, frost-haired girl whispering, "We'll share a mind one day." The memory dissolved like smoke. I stared at her from across the field, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. "Who am I?" I whispered. "You'll remember," she said, "when the moon is full again." Then she stepped backward into the orchard, her body fading into the silvered trunks like she belonged to them more than she'd ever belonged to human skin. The darkness swallowed her whole. I lay there until dawn, shaking, unable to move, the new memories curling like roots through the soil of my mind. The sun finally rose over the hills, warm and golden, but it did nothing to burn away the cold truth settling inside me. The orchard hadn't just stolen memories. It had given me something too, something I could feel growing, something waiting, something hungry. And the next full moon was only 28 days away. The days that followed were not days at all. At least, not in the way I remembered them before the orchard began threading its roots through my mind. Time stretched and folded like damp paper. I would wake in the morning certain I had only just closed my eyes, uncertain which dreams were mine and which belonged to the orchard, or the girl, or the countless strangers who had wandered between those trees and eaten what they should never have touched. I tried to keep myself anchored to the ordinary world. I made tea. I walked into town. I spoke to people, neighbors, clerks, a man delivering crates of winter apples. And yet, Every face I saw flickered with someone else's features. Every voice seemed layered with an echo, like a memory rising through the surface of water. Sometimes I didn't know if the memories were intruding or leaking. The orchard lived behind my eyes. On the third night, I woke with dirt under my nails. On the fourth, I found a crescent-shaped bruise on my wrist, as if something had gripped me. On the sixth, I dreamed of her, the girl with the frost-silver hair, standing at the foot of my bed, her pale eyes reflecting the moonlight that didn't exist in my room. She didn't speak. She only watched, breathing slowly, calmly, as though waiting for me to remember something she had no intention of saying aloud. But the worst came on the eighth night. That was when the moon returned to a narrow crescent. Still weak, still a sliver, and yet I felt it. A faint tug at the base of my skull like a magnet finding its twin. It pulled me toward the orchard with a longing that wasn't longing at all, more like obligation, like muscle memory. I fought it. I sat in a chair with all the lights on. I played music loud enough to sting. I held a kitchen knife in my hand because something told me I might need it, though I didn't know whether to use it against the orchard or myself. The tug only grew stronger, pulsed with every beat of my heart. By midnight, the air felt thick with moonlight, though barely any reached the ground, and I knew with a terrible certainty that I wouldn't survive the month if I let this continue. Something would give my mind, my memory, my sense of self, or all three, so I forced myself out of the house. Not toward the orchard. Away from it. I headed east, toward the highway that cut across the farmlands like a scar. Wind whipped at my clothes, cold and sharp. The moon hung low behind me, too bright for its thin shape, like it had swollen with something other than light. I walked fast, almost running, refusing to look back. But the further I went, the more I felt watched. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. Dry grass rustled in ways that didn't match the wind. And then, somewhere behind me, I heard the soft, unmistakable sound of a branch creaking under movement. Not wind. Wait, I stopped walking. Every instinct screamed that I should keep going, but every memory the orchard had shoved into my head told me that running was useless. The orchard wasn't a place. It was a mind, and I was inside it. Slowly, I turned. The field behind me was empty, but the tree-line of the orchard had moved. Just a little, just enough for me to notice. The silhouettes of the trees looked nearer than they had been when I'd left home. A whisper shivered across the field. I couldn't tell if it was a voice or a memory. My pulse hammered against my ribs.
No, iwisparat.
Not yet. Not now. The crescent moon reflected faintly in the orchard's bark, like the trees themselves were shining from within. And then I saw her, standing between two trunks, barefoot, silent, watching. Her hair moved like strands of moonlight caught in the branches, though no wind touched her. "You're early," she said. My breath caught. "The moon isn't full. The orchard doesn't need a full moon to call what it owns," she replied. A cold wave broke over my spine. "I don't belong to it," I said fiercely, though the words shook. She stepped forward. Her eyes dimmed for a moment, and I saw something like pity. "Look at your hands," she whispered. I hesitated. Then I looked down. Mud, dark, wet, packed beneath my nails. But worse than that, faint silver dust clung to my fingertips, shimmering like powdered moonlight. The same dust that coated the fruit when it glowed. The same dust that clung to the girl's hair, to the bark of the oldest tree. My stomach dropped. What did I do?" I breathed. Her voice lowered, almost gentle. "You've already started coming back while you sleep." I stumbled backward. No, that's impossible." "You woke with dirt on your hands before, didn't you?" she asked. "This is only the beginning." I pressed my palms against my temples. "Why is this happening to me?" She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Because the orchard remembers you," she said. "And now you're remembering it." "I have no memory of this place," I said. She stared at me, unblinking, and the moonlight flickered in her eyes like a candle behind frosted glass. "You will," she said. "But remembering is only half of what the orchard wants." She took another step toward me. I couldn't move. Her next words came softly, tenderly, almost lovingly. It wants the rest of you too. The field went silent. The wind stopped. The moon dimmed behind a thin, drifting cloud, and for a heartbeat everything felt suspended. Then something shifted behind me. A rustle, a creak, a low groan like a sigh pulled from deep beneath the earth. The orchard was moving again. Closer. I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My legs just moved, my breath tearing from my lungs as I sprinted toward the highway, toward the lights, toward anything that wasn't the monstrous pull of the moonlit trees behind me. But the ground didn't feel like normal ground. Pulsed beneath my feet, like a heartbeat, like mine, like the orchard's. And in the distance, faint but growing louder, I heard the girl's voice drift after me. You can't run from your own roots. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Because deep inside me, deeper than fear, deeper than memory, I already knew. She wasn't wrong. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned raw and the world blurred to a smear of shadows and dim stars. The highway's cold pavement came into view, a thin, gray ribbon cutting through the darkness. Headlights shimmered in the distance. Civilization, safety, a life that wasn't made of moonlight and stolen memories. But the moment my foot hit asphalt, I felt it. A sharp stab behind my eyes, a hook being yanked. I dropped to my knees with a strangled cry as images tore through my skull. Moon fruit splitting open with a wet whisper. Children dancing around the black tree. A figure that looked exactly like me, older, sharper, eyes hollowed by too much moonlight, burying something under its roots. The orchard wasn't letting go. It was tightening its grip. I forced myself upright, using a road marker as leverage. Cars drove past cautiously, their headlights sweeping over my trembling form, but none stopped. I must have looked insane. Wild-eyed, shaking, coated in dirt and silver dust. Couldn't blame them. I staggered along the shoulder of the highway, away from the orchard, away from the girl, away from the moon which felt like a watching eye overhead. Every step felt like dragging myself through wet cement. My body resisted movement in the wrong direction, as if the orchard had braided itself into my muscles. Eventually, I reached a gas station at the edge of town. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. The hum felt almost painful after the orchard's deep, breathing silence. I stepped inside, gripping the counter like I might collapse. The cashier stared at me. "You okay?" he asked. "No, not remotely." But I managed to say, "Water." My voice sounded wrong, the cadence off, as if someone had borrowed it and given it back slightly warped. He handed me a bottle. I paid with shaking hands. "You sure you don't need like a hospital or something?" he pressed. I opened my mouth to answer, but then his face flickered. Not literally, but in my mind. His features blurred into another man's face. Older, weathered, dirt smeared across his cheeks as he knelt beneath the orchard's oldest tree. I saw his hands cupping a glowing fruit. I saw a shadow behind him. I felt the moment of violent panic that wasn't mine. I staggered back, knocking into a display of chips. The cashier blinked. Hey, easy." I held up a hand. "I'm fine, Elide. Just dizzy." But the truth sank into me like cold water. The memories were coming faster. Not in fragments anymore. In full, intact pieces. Lives I had never lived. Terrified breaths. Secret rituals. Desperate bargains made under the full moon. And threaded between them, clearer than before, were my own memories. Real ones. Rising from beneath years of dirt and fear and forgetting. I saw myself as a child standing at the orchard's edge. I saw a woman, my mother, pulling me away harshly, whispering warnings I couldn't fully hear. I saw the frost-haired girl watching us from the trees. I saw myself returning there years later, alone, under a swollen moon. And then nothing. A black void. A memory deliberately cut away. My hands trembled as I opened the bottle of water. Tasted metallic. Wrong. Or maybe that was just me, tainted from the inside out. I left the gas station before the cashier asked more questions. Outside, the cold air felt like a slap. I leaned against the wall, breathing hard. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to know what the orchard had done to me. But every memory that surfaced pressed in the same direction, nudging, prodding, guiding. I had been there before. I had eaten the fruit before. And I had made a promise beneath that blackened tree. Promise I had forgotten. Or maybe a promise the orchard had allowed me to forget, until it wanted me to remember. A full wave of dizziness hit me, and I crouched down, gripping my head. Voices murmured through my mind. Children, adults, old men, young women, everyone who had ever eaten the moon fruit. They crowded my thoughts, their memories jostling, pushing, demanding space. But beneath all of them, faint but growing stronger, was a single voice. Come back. The girl's voice. No, not a girl. Something older. Something that had worn the shape of a girl the way the orchard wore the shape of a grove of trees. I whispered into the cold air, I won't. But the truth settled in my bones like frost. I couldn't run forever. The orchard wasn't finished with me. It would pull me by the mind, by the body, by the memories I couldn't even call my own anymore. And the full moon was drawing closer. 17 days. 16 if the orchard didn't wait for the exact moment. My breath fogged in the air. The highway hummed behind me. The world went on as if nothing was wrong. But I knew what was coming. The orchard was patient. It had centuries of patience. And it wanted me back. Not just my memories. Me. All of me. Roots and mind and everything tangled between. I stood slowly, weak but steady enough. If I was going back, whether by force or by surrender, then I needed to know the truth. I needed to uncover the memory that had been cut out of my mind like a rotten piece of fruit. I had 13 days until the next full moon. 13 days to remember what I had done. 13 days to understand what the orchard wanted. And maybe, if I wasn't too late, 13 days to figure out how to end this, even if ending it meant ending myself. I spent the next few days in a state of restless half-existence. Caught between the world I walked through and the orchard that lived inside my skull like a second brain. Every morning I woke certain I'd been somewhere else during the night. My sheets smelled faintly of moss. My socks were caked with dirt I didn't remember stepping in. Once, I found a small white petal on my pillow. But the orchard's trees didn't have petals. I didn't know what frightened me more, that I was unconsciously sleepwalking toward the orchard, or that the orchard might be sending pieces of itself to me. I tried to stay awake as much as possible. Coffee, energy drinks, cold showers that left my skin aching. But exhaustion blurred everything. At odd moments during the day, I would lose time. 1 second I'd be washing dishes, and the next I'd find myself standing at the window, staring toward the dark line of trees far in the distance. Mouth slightly open, fingers twitching like I'd been reaching for something. Everything in me was being rewired. Or returned. By the 5th day, I stopped trying to pretend I was in control. Instead, I forced myself to do what I'd been avoiding. I began looking into records.
Local archive.
Old folklore. Land deeds. Newspaper clippings. Anything tied to the orchard. But the orchard didn't officially exist. It wasn't marked on any map. It wasn't referenced in any public records. If not for the fact that I had walked through it with my own 2 feet, I might have begun to wonder if it was something that only existed to those it chose, visible only to the marked, the remembered, the claimed. When I searched older names of properties in the region, however, one thing kept surfacing. Disappearances. Disappearances spanning nearly a century. Hikers, farmers, pair of surveyors. A teenager walking home after a late shift. A woman last seen near the Moonlit fields. The orchard's shadow spread wider than its branches. But it was something else that chilled me to the bone. On the 7th day, I found an article from 17 years ago. I skimmed it at first. Another missing person case. But something in the text made me freeze. The article described a boy, 8 years old. Last seen wandering near the Moonlit orchard. Last seen holding something glowing in his hands. My skin went numb. 8 years old. The age I would have been in the memories the orchard was slowly coughing back into me. I read the name slowly, mouthing each syllable. My name. My full name. My throat closed. My pulse rushed through my ears like crashing waves. I whispered into the empty room. I went missing. I didn't remember being missing. No one had ever told me I'd been missing. There were no scars, no trauma, no whispers of searching parties or frantic families. My life, at least the life I remembered, had been normal, ordinary, a childhood filled with simple things. But the article was clear. I vanished. And then, days later, I reappeared, found wandering a mile from the orchard, covered in dirt and shivering but unharmed. Unharmed. The article used that word twice. But I knew better. Something had harmed me. Something had changed me. Something had taken part of me and given something else in return. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. The orchard had marked me when I was a child. I wasn't going back to settle a debt. I was going back because I had never finished what started all those years ago. That night, sleep came without my permission. Exhaustion took me like a tide, dragging me under before I could fight it. And in my dreams, or what I thought were dreams, I woke standing at the threshold of the orchard. The trees parted for me like a mouth opening. Moonlight seeped through the branches even though the moon wasn't full yet. Still waxing, still shy, yet unnaturally strong. Between the trunks, I saw her, the girl, or the shape pretending to be a girl. Her hair hung like strands of silver water. Her eyes captured the moon entirely, reflecting nothing else. "You're remembering," she said. I stepped forward against my will. The orchard floor felt soft, familiar. "What happened to me?" I asked. "You came here." Her voice held no malice, no cruelty, only certainty. "You came willingly." "Why?" "Because you wanted what the orchard offered." She touched one of the moon fruits hanging from a nearby branch. It pulsed faintly with light. "You wanted to forget." "Forget what?" I didn't speak the question aloud. Couldn't. Because the orchard answered for me. A memory tore open inside my mind like a wound ripping wide. I saw myself running as a child, crying. Someone shouting my name behind me. Someone else screaming. A door slamming. Cold air. Darkness. Running toward the only light I saw. The orchard. Glowing under the full moon. And the girl standing between the trees, beckoning with a gentle hand. "Come," she had whispered. "I can help you forget." I felt 8-year-old. Me step across the threshold. I felt the memory close. I stumbled, breathless, eyes stinging. The girl stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "You asked the orchard to take your pain," she murmured. "And it did." "What pain?" My voice shook so violently it barely left my mouth. "You will remember that, too," she said. "Soon." I grasped at her arm desperately. My fingers passed through her like through mist. "I want the truth," I whispered. "All of it." Her smile was both tender and terrible. "Then come back when the moon is full," she said. "And we will finish what began 17 years ago." The orchard shuddered around us. Roots twisted. Branches leaned. The dream collapsed like a dying star. I woke in my bed, sweating, shaking, crying without understanding why. I looked out the window. The moon was nearly half full. The orchard waited, and I was running out of time to uncover the pain I had begged to forget. The next morning, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my shaking hands, wondering how many of the memories inside me were real and how many were simply the orchard's roots curling into the softest parts of my mind. But this time, something else troubled me. Not the orchard, not the girl. The memory of my 8-year-old self running, crying, toward the orchard because I wanted to forget something unbearable. There was a pain I had buried so deeply that even the orchard hadn't shown me yet. And whatever it was, it terrified me more than anything the orchard had revealed. I needed to know. I needed the truth before the orchard used it to break me completely. But truth, as I soon learned, had its own cost. That afternoon, I went to see the one person who might remember what happened the night I disappeared as a child. My mother. I hadn't visited in months. Not for any reason I could name, simply distance, life, time. But as I walked up the cracked path to her door, something cold twisted in my stomach. Each step felt heavier. The closer I got, the more another memory flickered at the edges of my mind. A voice telling me to run, a hand grabbing my arm, fear, sharp, heavy fear, radiating through my child self. My mother opened the door slowly. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You look awful." "Thanks," I said weakly. She stepped aside. "Come in." "You're pale as a ghost." Inside the house, everything felt too warm, stale and thick, like the air had been sitting too long. Framed photographs covered the walls. Most showed smiling moments, captured and trapped in glass. But all I could think was how many of those smiles came after the night I lost myself in the orchard. "How long has it been?" she asked as I sat down at the kitchen table. "A while," I admitted. She poured tea, but I didn't touch it. I didn't come for comfort. I came for answers. "Mom," I said carefully, "I found something online about when I was a kid, when I disappeared." The teacup in her hand trembled. A thin crack echoed faintly through the ceramic. "You shouldn't go digging into that," she said softly. "Why?" "Because it's done. It's over." "Then tell me what happened." Her breath caught. She set the cup down slowly, hands shaking. "You wandered off," she said. "You were always curious. You got lost. A neighbor found you." "That's not what the article said." A shadow crossed her face. "Articles don't always tell everything." "Then tell me," I pressed. "Tell me what really happened." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something inside her looked older, worn in a way I'd never seen. "You went missing after a fight," she whispered. "One you shouldn't have seen." "A fight with who?" "With your father." The word hit me like a physical blow. My father. The man whose face I could barely remember. The man who had vanished from my life almost as silently as I had vanished from the orchard years ago. My mother rarely spoke of him. I never asked. "What kind of fight?" I asked. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. "The kind that makes a child run," she whispered. A memory flickered so fast I almost missed it. A shout. A crash. My father's hand grabbing my arm too tightly. My mother screaming for him to stop. Then me running. Me running into the darkness. Me running toward the orchard's strange, impossible light. I swallowed hard. "He hurt you. He hurt all of us," she said, voice cracking. "You were so terrified. You didn't know where to go. And when we found you again, you weren't the same." Her eyes met mine. "You didn't remember the fight. You didn't remember him. You didn't remember why you ran. You just said you weren't scared anymore." Cold crept over my skin. The orchard didn't just erase my pain. It erased him. It erased the reason I went there. It took the worst part of my childhood and buried it under roots and moonlight. And now it was giving everything back, piece by piece. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. "I have to go," I whispered. "Wait." She reached for me, panic flaring in her eyes. "You're not going back there, are you? You promised you wouldn't go near those woods again. You promised." My heart stuttered. "I promised." "Yes." Her voice dropped to a fearful whisper. "When you came back, you swore you'd never return. You said the girl in the orchard told you to stay away until you were old enough." The room spun. Old enough. Old enough for what? I stepped back from her, shaking my head. I need air." I pushed out of the house, into the cold dusk, lungs burning. Old enough. The orchard didn't just want a lost child. It wanted the adult that child would become. It had been waiting, preparing, cultivating, and I had no idea for what. As I reached the end of the driveway, a sudden metallic taste filled my mouth. I touched my lips. Silver dust came away on my fingers. The moon wasn't full yet, but the orchard was already inside me, already feeding, already growing. A voice whispered across the wind, soft as breath against my neck. "Come back." I looked toward the distant treeline, toward the orchard's dark, patient silhouette, and I realized something with bone-deep certainty. I wasn't running from the orchard. I was being led back to it, piece by piece, memory by memory, light by light. And when I returned, when the moon was full, whatever I had forgotten would finally be revealed. Whatever the orchard had been preparing me for since I was 8 years old. And I didn't know if I would survive knowing it. I stepped forward, letting the cool moon-washed air fill my lungs, and for the first time since the orchard had found me, I felt something close to calm. A brittle, trembling calm, but enough to steady my steps. Mara's silhouette waited ahead, half lit by the pale gleam that filtered between the branches. She didn't turn. She didn't speak. She just stood there, barefoot in the frost-kissed grass, as if she had been waiting for me since the first night I'd ever set foot here. And maybe she had been. When I reached her, she finally turned her head. Her eyes caught the moonlight, shimmering like wells that remembered more than they should. "You understand now," she said softly. "I understand enough," I replied. Her smile was small, pained. "That's all anyone ever does." We walked together without discussing where we were headed. The orchard guided our steps. The branches shifted subtly, their crystalline leaves whispering. Far in the distance, I could still hear faint echoes of lives not my own, those I had taken in with each bite of moon-born fruit. They weren't screaming anymore. They were quiet, watching, waiting. The crooked path opened into the hollow where the oldest tree stood, its bark silvered, its roots threaded through the ground like veins. The air around it pulsed faintly, as though the tree breathed with the moon. Mara touched its trunk with the back of her hand. "It will ask you," she murmured. "It always asks." And I felt it, like a tide pulling at something inside me. A gentle pressure, a question without words. "Will you keep them?" I swallowed. "What happens if I say yes?" "You become part of it," she said. "Part of the chain. You carry the memories. You hold them when the moon wanes. And when someone new comes, you pass them on. And if I say no?" Her breath hitched, almost too soft to notice. "Then it takes something else instead." The tree's glow deepened. The pressure grew firmer. My own memories flickered. My childhood. My mother's laugh. The cold wind off the lake behind our old house. Fragile things. Mortal things. And the new memories, the borrowed ones, crowded behind them. A boy drowning in a flooded cellar. A woman singing to her unborn child. An old man burying coins beneath a floorboard. A shadowy figure walking through the orchard long before my lifetime. I steadied myself, drew in a breath. "I'll keep them," I whispered. The orchard exhaled. Branches shivered overhead. The leaves hummed. A soft, warm rush folded through me, and every stolen memory settled into place. Not as something invasive, but as something catalogued, held, preserved. They were no longer screaming or clawing at the inside of my skull. They trusted me. Mara's shoulders slumped with relief. She looked at me with something like gratitude and something like grief. "You'll feel them when the next full moon comes," she said. "They'll want to be heard. And you'll guide the next one who walks this path." I nodded slowly because the weight of that truth sat heavy, but it sat right. The moonlight brightened once more, then dimmed as clouds drifted across it. The orchard fell into a softer darkness, less threatening, more watchful. Mara stepped back, fading toward the path that led to the boundary of the orchard. "You'll know where to find me when it's time." "For what?" I asked. She hesitated. Then, "For the last memory." Before I could ask what that meant, the wind swept through the branches, and she was already walking away, dissolving into shadow and silver. I turned to the orchard, listening. The whispering was quiet now, gentle, like the settling of old books on a shelf. And deep inside that hush, I felt it. A pulse, promise, and a responsibility I had chosen. The moon slipped behind the clouds, and the orchard slept.